Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out QNT's price chart. But first things first, apologies in advance for my terrible voice. I unfortunately once again recently caught like a very bad cold. So if I sound like absolutely weird, again, sorry about that one. Cannot really do a whole lot about it. Now, before we get into what is happening on the live chart, and I do actually think that we might be quite close to the end of our move down in quant, we are going to talk about this very important tweet that I think actually Mr. Gilbert Verdion himself retweeted it, and I saw it from there. And this is actually, in my view, kind of a big deal. It's not really something new. We actually talked about this a couple of videos back. Maybe I think it was about 2 months ago, but I think it is definitely worth talking about it again. Now, in case you are a new viewer and you're not really familiar with what Quant is doing, you should know that they have a tool called Overledger, and it is essentially a universal translator, and it's going to connect all the blockchains together. Now, it's very important to understand that Overledger itself, unlike Chainlink, is not really a blockchain itself. Again, it's just a tool that is going to connect many blockchains together and make them talk to each other very much smoothly. And also, one very important thing that it does is actually this. Overledger is able to connect TradFi systems to the new tech and blockchain space, and this isn't really something that a lot of competitors are able to do. So if you are a new viewer to the channel, I would highly suggest to actually do your due diligence about Quant and see what they are doing maybe in more details. And then if you think, okay, this is actually a great project with a solid fundamental and I would say very much bright future ahead, then okay, feel free to come back and watch some YouTube videos. Now, as we move forward, it seems like that Overledger is actually starting to shift from a centralized software product into actually kind of a bit decentralized community power network, and some might call this like a real network of networks. And this important tweet is definitely supporting this thesis. So let's break it down real quick, and then we are going to go on the live chart. And first things first, we have to talk about Fusion, which is acting as the middle layer. You see, Fusion is essentially like the super connector that sits between blockchains like, for example, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and also private banks. And up until now, most access to Overledger actually depended on gateways run by Quant or their partners. And that is about to change soon. In this tweet, they talk about something called BYON, meaning bring your own node. Essentially, companies, and I would say probably eventually down the road, also users, are going to be able to run their own Overledger gateway, and that means you don't really need to rely on Quant's infrastructure anymore. And I think even in that case, you do actually have to pay a bit of fee, not a whole lot, but you have to pay the fee with, I believe they said, the QNT token itself. Then they talk about something called BYOC, bring your own connector, and this is actually, in my view, like a really important and huge upgrade, because with the help of BYOC, instead of waiting for Quant guys to integrate every single blockchain, okay, anybody can actually build a connector for any network and plug it into Overledger. And this, my friends, is actually going to, in my view at least, massively speed up growth and adoption. Now, in my opinion, BYON and BYOC is actually going to give Quant the edge, and I got two very important reasons for it. And the first important reason comes down definitely, in my view, to fine-grained access control. You see, banks can actually choose exactly what information they want to share, and they are going to be able to stay private while at the same time still use multi-chain connections. Reason number two, again, I believe comes down to the huge scalability through BYOC, because once more, I'm gonna say it, anybody can hopefully soon integrate their own system or blockchain, which makes Overledger expand like much faster than other interoperability solutions. And again, combine these two reasons, I think you can easily see why QNT definitely is going to have the advantage. And I do think that these updates actually create a bit of a loop that pushes the whole ecosystem forward by itself for two very important reasons. Number one is going to be incentivized infrastructure. You see, the biggest part of this update and this important tweet, if you pay attention, is actually the confirmation of QNT staking, meaning people who are going to run Overledger gateways will actually earn rewards, I would say probably handsomely, and this gives operators a real reason to support the network, which increases the number of nodes, and also it is going to make every single thing faster, safer, and very much more decentralized, which is exactly what we love to see. And the second reason has to come down to network effects, because every single time that someone is going to bring a new node, and they are going to be able to do so through BYON, or maybe let's say every single time that somebody is going to add a new connector through BYOC, okay, the whole network is going to become more useful. And for instance, maybe a bank is going to join today and only connect to Ethereum, but let's say, I don't know, maybe like 20 days later, because a developer somewhere built a new connector, the same bank is going to be able to all of a sudden interact with another chain, or even maybe a private ledger used in global trade. And the network through this process is just going to keep on growing and growing at like a very, very fast pace. So overall, I think these updates actually showed that Quant is now activating the full network of networks model, and by letting anybody run infrastructure and anybody add new integrations, while at the same time rewarding them in QNT. Again, this is really the key part in my view, and I'm actually going to talk about staking and the things that are happening right now behind the scenes in the next videos. Because of these things, the ecosystem, I think, is going to become self-growing, and it is building momentum without really relying on the core team, which again, it speeds up, in my view, adoption by quite a lot. So overall, I think we are fully on the right track. I do think probably in the next week or two, we are probably going to hear some big news about staking. Now, let's go on the live chart and see what is happening in the short term, because if you remember, the last time that we talked about Quant, I think, excuse me, we were right around this area, and the idea was that, well, okay, this is a strong move on the downside, followed by possibly a bit of a correction, and let's just consider in Quant having another move down in order to take the lows and maybe even go a bit lower in order to get a break of this level, and then after it we can have a bit of a bounce. And we did continue our move on the downside, but so far at least I think it is safe to say that we're not really seeing the bounce that we are expecting. However, I actually believe this is going to change, hopefully soon. First things first, you see, in the previous video, if you remember, we talked about a possible head and shoulder that a lot of people on Twitter actually were talking about back then, and I was like, well, okay, sure, this can be a bit of a head and shoulder structure, but the fact that this last leg of our head and shoulder seems to be kind of slow and choppy, this actually suggests maybe this head and shoulder is not really going to work. And now I think I'm actually having some more evidence supporting this scenario. Why is that? Because let's just draw the neckline for our supposedly head and shoulder. There we go. So the idea in a head and shoulder is that you are going to go under the neckline, do a pullback, and then a continuation of the move down. And in this phase, your move down is actually going to accelerate quite a bit. However, as you can see, in Quant, I think it is very much safe to say our move down did not really accelerate. That's why I want to argue most likely in here, bears are actually starting to run out of power. And if I really had to choose, I'm going to argue probably this head and shoulder is not really going to reach to its target, which, by the way, the target for it is about, let's say, somewhere between $75-$70 area, and I don't really think that we are going to go and reach to those levels. Like, do not get me wrong, by the way, even if we go down and we maybe touch this important level about $77, even at that point you are going to see me still being very much optimistic, because I do think that most likely we are having in here a series of 1-2s. This can be 5 up into 1, correction for 2, and was 6. Good move up into wave 3 and 4 and 5, which on a higher degree is going to be into a wave 3, followed by a correction for 4, and then even again another big move on the upside into our wave 5. And let's actually go around here real quick. There we go. You see, if you want to argue in terms of Elios waves, we're gonna have our final low around this region. Maybe this is like a very important support. Okay, Elios wave wise, you have to be able to find off of the lows a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up. And in terms of the sub waves, excuse me, let's just zoom in a little bit. Okay, I think you know it if you are a regular viewer of the channel. We're gonna have 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. And for our corrections for wave 2 and 4, we can consider different possibilities. Let's say maybe ABC into wave 4 and a WXY into wave 2. And essentially in quant, I think we might be somewhere around these areas, meaning what? Our next moves are going to be into a series of wave 3s. And in terms of Elios waves, it's very important to understand that wave 3 is actually in a lot of cases like the most strongest and sharp move. So I think we can definitely argue that in quant, if something like this is happening, yup, definitely exciting times are ahead. And here is another top tip for you. You see, Elios wave suggests in a lot of cases, our wave 2 is actually a rather deep correction. And if you are having a series of 1, 2, meaning this is 1, 2, and then another 1 and a 2, the second wave 2 right in here is not really going to be as deep of a correction as this wave 2 right in here on a higher degree. And this is actually one very important reason for why I want to say probably right around these areas in quant, our move down is going to come to an end. You see, I think, again, based on what we just talked about, this wave 2 is going to be on a higher degree relative to this one. And if I just take Fibonacci's, there we go. As you can see, in this phase down for our wave 2, we retrace to about, let's say, like 90% of the Fibonacci. Now, because this is on a higher degree, I think it makes perfect sense to say, you know what, sure, this is a wave 2, but it's not really going to be that much of like a deep correction. And for instance, I am very much comfortable maybe calling for like just another very teeny tiny move on the downside in order to get to about the 61.8% level, about $84, and then we start having a beautiful bounce. And I think we actually talked about this in the previous video as well. You see, generally I'm gonna say between 79 to about, I believe it was, yes, $83, $84, we are actually having like a cluster of very important support areas from mainly daily and also I would say H4 time frame as well. So again, one way or the other, I do think in quant downsides are actually quite limited, and based on the moves that we are having, and especially I'm gonna say the shape of them, once more I think we can come up with the same conclusion, suggesting this move hopefully soon is going to come to an end. And again, if you do not care about the short-term price action, and for example, you are willing to just close your eyes for, let's say, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, I think you should just be a little bit more patient and see, are we in quant going to get a break of the next line for this beautiful head and shoulder structure? Now, again, it's very important to understand this head and shoulder right now, it's not really confirmed yet. When will it get confirmed? You know it, when we get a move up in order to go above the next line, which is somewhere around, let's say, $107, and then do a pullback followed by a continuation of the move up. If you are willing to just go away and come back in about a couple of weeks, I think you're at that point going to see QNT being at like higher levels, and at that point I think our move up is going to get accelerated based on the fact that we just talked about. If we're going to get another move up, it is going to be into a series of wave 3s. Okay, it's very important to understand that. And here is my final point. Let's just do this. So in the long term in quant, if I just put this chart on logarithmic, as you can see, for 4 absolutely 100% annoying years, we were just consolidating, and mainly in terms of Elios waves, and to a degree also in terms of classic patterns, I think we are having like an ABCDE, a triangle structure. And if I just zoom in a little bit more, there we go. I think we are also having like a very midterm triangle starting from these areas about September of last year. And if I just draw the lines for our triangle, there we go. This is going to be the lower band. And yeah, okay, this can be the higher band of our triangle. And as you can see, our range is just getting tighter and tighter by the minute, meaning what? One way or the other, it is time to break out of our pattern. Now, at this point, you are allowed to consider two different possibilities. One is going to be a massive breakdown in order to set new lows and take the lowest low, which I think in this cycle is somewhere around $45. The other one is going to be a massive break on the upside in order to start a magnificent bull run. And based on what I'm seeing in here, I'm going to argue there's like I'm not gonna say like 100% because of course there is no certainty in any market at any given moment. We're just talking about different possibilities. I'm just going to say this: there is at least like a 70% chance, in my opinion, that in quant we are going to have a massive breakout, and I do think we are like quite close to the moment of that big break, and hopefully our patience is going to be rewarded big time very soon. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in QNT's chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.